What's up guys, Chinzo here. Today I'll be reviewing the Napier Backroadz Truck bed tent. I've been using this tent for the past 2 years and I can't say that I've gone easy on it. If you follow my channel, you know that I like to camp in the low season when conditions are less than desirable. This allows me more options and better access to campsites, but it also puts a greater strain on my gear.
I definitely need to take shelter. It is raining way harder and it is way windier than it was yesterday.
After 2.5 years of camping in the cold,
See my breath.
the rain, during high winds, and in full sun, I feel like I'm finally qualified to review this truck bed tent. In this review, we'll talk about the setup process, I'll give you my list of pros and cons, and I'll also talk briefly about some alternative camping and overlanding options. Setup usually takes me about 10 minutes, give or take a few, which isn't bad considering I'm usually filming and moving a camera around most of the time. Most campers claim this setup is quick, easy, and painless, and in my opinion that is mostly true. The quickest way to set this up, I've found, is to anchor it to the truck bed first, then set it up like a normal ground tent. That sounds simple enough. However, to keep the front of the tent secure, Napier utilizes 3 elastic straps that go under the tailgate and buckle on the other side. Maneuvering these straps between the bed and the tailgate can be somewhat frustrating and does require a bit of time and patience, but it's not enough for me to label the setup as difficult. Most of the time it's just a minor inconvenience. Overall, the setup isn't bad, and I feel like it takes about the same amount of time and effort as setting up a traditional ground tent. Without a doubt, the number one benefit to owning this tent over other options is value. There's definitely some cool options out there if you're looking to camp out of your truck, like rooftop tents or bed caps, but if you just want to get your camp up off the ground and utilize a space in your truck bed without spending a few $1,000s, then the Napier truck tent is definitely the way to go. I purchased mine through Amazon for about $150. As of right now, prices range from about $114 on the low end to about $184 on the high end, depending on the size of your truck bed. I've had mine for a few years now, and it's still going strong, so I'd say that's a great value. This tent packs up nicely and weighs 16 pounds, so it takes up very little space, and it also requires no modification to your truck. The setup allows your truck to be the rugged, adventurous, overlanding base camp for the weekend, and go right back to being your daily driver during the week with minimal effort and compromise. This tent not only gets your sleeping space up off the ground, but it provides you with plenty of room. My truck only has a 5'7" short bed, but the tent utilizes the full length of my tailgate and allows me to fit a queen-size air mattress with some room left over for gear. I'm 5'9" and I've got plenty of room to stretch out.
Right, so camp is all set up. Once again, I've got my 20-degree sleeping bag, got a blow-up mattress, and as always, I've got a nice thick quilt underneath for some added insulation. And of course, I've got my little buddy propane heater. I got some cold gear from Under Armour to help keep me warm. Of course, some thick wool socks and a fleece outer layer. So I also added a cocoon liner for my sleeping bag. Then I went ahead and picked up a carbon monoxide detector. I do keep it pretty well ventilated in here, but I thought that was a good idea to pick up just to be on the safe side.
For cross breeze, we've got 2 large side windows and 1 small one in the back, all of which have mosquito netting, including the front opening. These windows come in handy if you're camping in warm weather, and also if you're camping in the cold and you need a little bit of ventilation if you're running a heater. I usually try to camp during times that will offer me the most privacy, so that usually means camping midweek during a rainstorm, a high wind advisory, or a freeze warning. but it also means that my tent has to be up to the task. And so far this tent has taken everything that I and Mother Nature have thrown at it.
Definitely need to take shelter. It is raining way harder and it is way windier than it was yesterday. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to stay dry, hop in there. See you in a bit.
A lot of campers tend to avoid the rain, but I actually love it. As long as my tent can keep me dry, I find rain camping to be the most relaxing. I slept amazingly last night. It's probably the best sleep I've had at a campsite in a very long time. Weather was perfect. It's down in the low 50s all night. And in case you're wondering about the Napier Backroadz Truck tent, I stayed bone dry all night, and I'm actually really pleased with this setup.
I was old, I was young, I was sitting in the sun, I was tired of the run, I was done.
During high winds, this tent is a bit more difficult to set up, but once it's anchored down, it's solid. This is where I learned that it's always better to set up inside the truck bed and not on the ground.
Well, setup is all done and my tent did not fly away. So it looks like I'm gonna have a pretty cozy place to sleep tonight and a pretty damn good view to wake up to as well.
I will mention that in really high winds, the side of the tent can rub the side of the truck and cause some light paint scratching, but I'll go into more detail on that later in the video.
The stars look amazing out here tonight. It should reach about 25 degrees or so early morning, I think around 3 or 4 a.m. I'll catch up with you guys in the morning and let you know how it goes.
In the middle of the night, I realized that I'd forgotten my beanie and I was losing a lot of heat from my head. So I just kind of wrapped my head with this old shirt. And I survived. It wasn't too bad. I did get some sleep. I woke up a few times because I was cold. I had to readjust, swap out propane bottles, that sort of thing. Right now it's 7 a.m. and it's still 28 degrees right now, but have a look at this view.
When it comes to downsides of owning this tent, I will say the list is pretty small. However, if there is one thing that I really don't like, it has to do with the contact points between the tent and the side of my truck. 90% of the time there's no issue with the tent contacting my paint, but on really windy days the tent has been known to leave some swirls and scratches in my paint job. The scratches aren't super obvious, but they're still there. This can be prevented by laying a soft barrier between the tent and the side of my truck, or by simply avoiding camping during high winds. I'm probably not going to do either of those, so for now I'll just live with it.
So it is really windy out here, but now that I've got the tent set up, I want to give you guys a quick look and show you guys the view that I'll be waking up to tomorrow. Not too bad, huh?
The second con is just a slight inconvenience, but it is worth considering before purchasing this tent. Because my sleeping quarters are connected to my vehicle, it's pretty safe to say that I won't be driving my truck for the duration of my trip. Making and breaking camp every day is one option if you really wanted to drive somewhere, but I usually bring my bike along, and that becomes my primary mode of transportation once camp is all set up. Aside from those two issues, there's not much else that I dislike about this tent, and the only time I really notice any shortcomings in my setup is when I compare it to its much pricier alternatives. While this setup works great, I do acknowledge that a rooftop tent would set up and break down in a fraction of the time, which would be really nice after a long road trip. And if I went with a bed cap setup, I could potentially set up my sleeping space before even getting on the road. Both of these alternative setups add an extra level of cool factor and convenience, but each has their own drawbacks as well. I'm really not opposed to any of these setups, and it is really nice to have several options. Overall, I think the Napier Backroadz Truck tent is an excellent budget option for camping or overlanding. After a few years of testing this thing out, I'd have to say this was a solid purchase and one that I would recommend to anyone who's looking for a fun way to get outdoors without spending a ton of money. With that being said, I have done a lot of camping in this tent over the last few years, and I think I'm overdue for a refreshing new setup before this winter. So be sure to stick around so you don't miss out on future videos. As always, thanks for watching, stay stoked, and I'll see you in the next one.